I'm very excited to introduce you all to our next guest here at the Breakthrough Code. She's somebody that we've been in a group together for several years, but we didn't meet until about 2 weeks ago down in Mexico. And now I see she's a sister in the same cause that I'm in, helping people really expand who they are and live lives of greatness. So Lisa Garr, welcome to the show here. We're really excited to have you here.
Thank you so much. I'm honored. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, and many people probably already know you because you've done hundreds of shows. You have something called The Aware Show.
Yes.
You have millions of viewers every month, and then you've done other shows for Gaia TV and Hay House, I think. So this is your natural place to be. I'm sure you spend a lot of time in the studio.
I love this. I love it, because it broadcasts out to the world the message of that inspires other people's positive growth and change. So that's always been the tagline kind of our show that came to me in a dream. So yeah, that's exactly what you're doing. You're broadcasting message that inspire positive growth and change.
Yeah, we're doing it together today.
Yep.
So excited to have you. Hey, let's go back and learn more about you, and specifically start when you were 19, starting a multi-million-dollar business in Hollywood. What were you doing then?
Oh my goodness. I had started an audience casting business a long time ago because there was a need for people to watch shows that were being developed. And so I got to be known as the person with the list, and then that kind of grew into the company with the list, and then now that's grown into, a multi-million-dollar company with hundreds of thousands of people going to television shows and getting paid. Yeah. It's a really interesting model, but it creates jobs for so many people, and it's a job between jobs, or it's a full-time thing if you want to do it. And it's given people great opportunities to be able to kind of launch into their dream, which is the Hollywood dream.
Yeah, very cool. To be in a show and be on TV, that's awesome. And you still have that company today too, right?
I still have that company today.
How many years has it been?
30 years.
30 years.
Yes.
Yeah, starting at 19 years old. That's amazing.
And it was just from a dream and I mean, just hard work. That's basically what it came from.
Well, and that's what, in reading about you and talking with you, like you were driven, you were grinding, even to the extent where you sacrificed taking care of yourself and maybe relationships. And then you had something pretty traumatic happen. Can you take us through that experience?
Yes, it was through that. The energy in the entertainment industry is just, do what you have to do to make it work. It's the entire
Everything
life.
is working really hard.
Yeah. And I love it. I mean, I love that. I love the energy. It creates such a family. So I got to know some of the friends who were working on this other show called Mad TV, and the assistant director and her friends went mountain biking on the weekends. She's like, why don't you come? So this woman is such a pinnacle person in my life, Dorothy Wallen. So I started going riding with her and her friends, and they would take me on these epic 8-hour rides. And I mean, you would just die. But it was so fun because it was out in the middle of nowhere and just beautiful. It was just
talking about riding on a flat road.
Oh, no. We're talking extreme. And I was always the last one up, and there was no rest for the weary. Let's go, she's here. I'm like, and it was always great though, because of the beauty and the camaraderie and the effort, and my body, I loved it. And so they started racing, so I started racing, and then I got to be good in this race world. And I was in a California state championship at one point. It was like a 7-race series. So it was the 7th race, double points. So here I am, and I'm in 2nd place overall in the series.
Wow.
And didn't really know this. So it was like for the full California title. So as women do, we all get on the start line and everybody's great. They love each other. What are you doing? We're all friends. You got a biochemist over here and a teacher, and we're all just like, you go, girl. It's really a fun.
Then the race starts.
Well, it's also the same way in the race. So if somebody's got it and you don't that day, you encourage them. And then it just goes from there. So it was, 108 degrees that day. It was really rough conditions. And maybe, maybe 5,000 feet of climbing. And it was like 25 miles. But it was this loop that kept going up and down this one mountain. And it was the last lap. And I was in the top of the mountain. And I looked and I saw the first place girl in front of me. And after that was the descent and then the finish line. And I happen to be a really good descender. I love descending. I can fly down mountains and shingle tracks. So I don't feel that. I feel it's just, and I absolutely love the gravity of it.
Wow.
So I looked at her and thought, okay, I'm done, because I'm like so drained, drank all of my water. And that was the last thing that I remembered. And I don't even remember prior to that because I must have hit my head on a rock because the helmet was shattered when we finally found it. And all I experienced was looking up the hill at the bike that was there, and I was not on it. And my body wanted to get on. It was still in the momentum. And I just kept slipping and slipping and slipping on these pine needles. And it was significant because I slipped into this state of pure consciousness. And I don't even know how long it was. Long enough for a medic to get to the body and then land a helicopter and to put the body in the helicopter in the meantime. I'm having this incredible experience of complete boundaryless. And there was nothing that was separating me and the world and universe around.
And that's interesting how you said the body.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
like
was
that
completely disconnected from that.
Wow.
I watched it, a little bit of it, but it wasn't interesting to me. What was interesting to me was that experience of the interconnectedness of everything. And I started with this swaying of the top of the tree, and I imagined that the tree and the wind are the same. And if they're the same, then everything's the same. And I really went into this incredible expansion that there is no separation between us and anything, including our wants, our desires.
Yeah.
Where we get into so much trouble is that we become separate and of those wants and desires, and we think they're outside of us, or that we have to go get them, and that they're goals that we reach for.
Right.
And that is the absolute opposite. That when you become that goal, and Tom, I started having these experiences of the medics. I started to feel their feelings of these people that were working on my body.
Right.
And the feelings were completely not mine. I was attracted to another medic. I wanted to be an artist. All of these feelings, and they were completely unfamiliar, but they were wonderful. And I'm like, what is happening? But all of this experience was happening in this timeless space. And then I felt Asia come around. I had never been to Asia, but I felt these feelings and the swirling of the Orient around my body, around my awareness, really.
Yeah.
Completely unaware of the body. And I have since then really looked into what was it? Was it like my conscious mind was knocked so far offline that all I was pure consciousness? Yeah. I don't know. But I know that when my body finally got into the helicopter and there was a medic that was putting a needle in my arm, it shocked me. The needle shocked me into waking up, and I started flailing my arms, and I could not figure out where I was.
Right.
It was like way too much information coming in, and I went slammed right into fear. And it's such a metaphor, because when are you in this great space and then you get fear just knocks you out of and constricts you and contracts you, and you become this tiny thing. And that's what happened. I got into this hospital, and I remember the thing landed, and there was windy, and the doctor says, "What's your name?" And I knew my name, but it wouldn't come out. Nothing came out, and I freaked out. I just choked, because I must have damaged the part of my brain, which I found out later, that was responsible for my speech and my memory. And I lost that in that moment, and my world shut down. I was in so much fear after that, because I couldn't remember anything, including this incredible experience I had.
You didn't remember that experience?
Nothing.
Oh, okay.
So the strange synchronicity of events that happened is that I started after that recovering through this neurofeedback specialist, which I don't even remember how I found him. But he was working with children with autism and that had seizures, and they were in the waiting room. Remember these moms?
Yeah.
And these kids were having such incredible breakthroughs. And all I was trying to do was build a hot air balloon with my brain. And through a year and a half of that, I reconnected with that experience and realized that one frequency that you have can build the balloon. And once you go back into fear, the balloon goes away. So the brain learns to entrain itself to that frequency of creation, of positivity, of reward.
Yeah.
That's all the brain wants, is a reward. It only wants the reward. And so that would build that center of the brain back again. And then the fear part of the brain started to implode, because it was no longer feeding the neurons towards that section of my brain. So I learned how to build a balloon. And that's all I wanted. And from that experience, it awakened my experience of this near-death thing that I had. And then the synchronicity started happening.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting too, when you had that feeling of oneness, you were not in your body. When they jabbed the needle, all of a sudden it brought you back in your body, and then you had all the fears and everything else happening, because when we feel separate, it's when we feel we are this body, right? This body is our vehicle in this human existence, but you experience yourself as a spiritual being with oneness, which many people have done, by doing mushrooms. You did it by a biking accident.
I don't suggest either. I suggest
Exactly.
it's accessible to everyone. I mean, I don't think you need to do the substance.
I agree. No, I totally agree. And I'm really glad you brought that up. But it's just so interesting that you got pulled back into fear when you came back into your body. And I think so many of us identify ourselves as our body, and that's always going to create a fearful state.
Oh my God, think about cancer, think about illness, and you get that word, that C diagnosis, and you go into massive shutdown and constriction. This happened with my brother. It's the most terrifying word to hear. And to go into possibility, there's no bridge. There's nobody that teaches you how to go right to possibility from that place of fear. It's a process of knowing the possibility exists. And that's what I was going to say about I don't suggest the accidents or do not try this at home. But I do know that this state is accessible to everyone, that you can access the part of the brain that has the potential. There is so much research on this, of the human potential movement, as we know. Gene Houston started. And when you really look into the momentum of the conversation around possibility, or the momentum of the conversation around scarcity and lack and fear, it's a downward spiral. It creates more of the same chemicals in the brain. Yet the other creates the executive function of the brain. It goes towards the dopamine and the rewards and the opiates of the brain. And that puts you into ideas. Oh, well, this idea. Or maybe what I did is I was meditating. I was meditating during that time because that's all I knew to do. And I found synchronistically, I thought, I really want to broadcast to the world what it is I'm experiencing. And randomly, not so randomly though.
Because created it.
Exactly. A friend called and said, well, there's a radio station in LA that's been sold, and the drive time hosts have left, and they're looking for someone to fill the spot. You've been in entertainment. Do you want to try this? I'm like, yes.
And when you really think, like, where the heck did that come from? Like, there's no logical reason that you get that call, but from the creative mind and you really being open to it and just not stuck into the physical world, what we can just touch and feel. You created that opportunity, which now has been how many years? You've been on
20 years, 5,000 interviews. It's been a journey.
I feel so unfair of that 5,000 interviews.
I'm just saying this is my meditation. Doing this is my opportunity with you to single focus, to share inspiration, to talk about purpose. And someone someday will hopefully take something away from this and say, not only if she could do it, you can do it, but here's how. Here's how. Starting with knowing that intention is stronger than you realize.
We're always creating.
It is a thing. It's a thing.
Yeah.
And when you start to realize that, if it's got to be driven by story and purpose, that's the fuel. But when you start putting things out into the universe and becoming them, you start to attract them into your sphere. Just like it's an energy. It's a like attracts like concept of physics. It's always there. You just got to tap into it.
And I want to talk more about your processes in a minute, but let's talk about some of the mentors, because I was looking at all the people you've interviewed and people that are mentors and amazing beings. One of them was when I was a young guy growing up and was looking to expand outside of the norm, because my dad was killed in Vietnam when I was only 3. And so when something like that happens, like, life is not black and white anymore, right? It's gray, and you start looking for answers that can't be explained by, traditional religions potentially, or things like that. And so I ran into Wayne Dyer, right? And I remember reading his book, The Erroneous Zone, back when. And that he was one of your mentors. What did you learn from Dr. Dyer?
Oh my God, so much. He was fascinated with the near-death experience that I had, and he was always asking me about the other side and what it was like there and the light. And he was always fascinated by that experience. And I think what I learned from him is he always used to share with me, I was raised an orphan. He was raised an orphan. He was raised in orphanages, in foster care, with never really knowing any certainty in his life.
Yeah.
And from that experience to go to being this incredible mega best-selling author and the father of motivation and impacting the lives so generously and authentically of millions of people, he always used to share with me, I just want to pinch myself. I can't believe that I used to be this and I am now this. Yeah. And he authentically always used to be amazed by that. He never lost his roots. He never lost his experience of his father and the absence of his father and that torment he went through. He never lost who he was. He always remained that little boy that's having this incredible experience. So that's why he always says that I'm a spiritual being having a human experience. Yeah. And so now he's truly experiencing that light.
Yeah, right.
He went a little too far to the light, but he's still here with us.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And he used his story very well, right? He used that story to really become somebody who did great things, and we could look at him and go, wow, he had it pretty tough, and look at what he's done.
Yes.
And I think, most people have at least one story in their life that was not pleasant, but they can look back on it now and you can say, that made me. And you really inspire people to use those stories to go help other people so that they can really see life is always working for you.
Yes.
That thing you didn't like, it wasn't some bad thing. You weren't punished. It was something that you needed to expand into somebody who was greater than the old version of who you thought you were. So talk about your processes for helping people do that.
I love that part of it because for 20 years we've listened to people tell their stories through books and practitionerships or whatever it is that they do. And then we have live callers saying, no, I was born with nothing. I live in an area where there's gang violence all around me. How do I get to what you're talking about?
I think their story is so unique that it can't.
And I've heard
something that empowers them. Yeah.
The hardest stories. I mean,
those things, yeah,
come from nothing. And when they hear someone who's talking about prison reform or who's really starting education in prisons or helping vets, get back into jobs, they realize that there are ways to get out of their current existence. And when you couple that with the conversation of your story right now is where you are.
Yeah.
And you, through these series of maybe books that you read or mentors that you find or inspiration that's out there for you, and you start to take action on that inspiration, you take this story of yours, you turn it around through your healing journey, and you pay it forward. You pay it forward to anyone that can learn from your story, that can share your story, that cannot suffer the way you suffer because you help them with some way of getting out of it. And this is the greatest reward that I experience, is watching people. Telling your story does 4 things in my experience. It wakes you up to who you are. When someone really gets their origin story, their body is flushed, they just get, this is why it all happened. This is why I'm alive. And then as they start to tell a story, it starts to do the second thing, which is heal them even more. Every time they tell the story of where they came from to where they're going, a part of them unfolds again and heals again and loves more. The third thing that happens is the person that's listening to the story is healed as well.
Right.
That mother whose child was lost through a gunshot wound, I will always remember this woman. She started to experience the healing for the shooter. She has expressed this to every mother who's lost a child unimaginably, and her mission now is to support these women. So the third thing is it heals the person that tells it, and the fourth thing is it sinks you right into your purpose, right? Like that single track on my book sinks you right into your purpose, and you fly down that path. Yeah. And that's what telling your story does. It does so much more than just, well, this is who I am, this is where I came from.
Right.
It fuels you every moment every day into that place of purpose.
Yeah.
And if you don't have purpose, if you're not growing, you're dying. If you don't have purpose, you meander and wander through life and it doesn't go well. Purpose fuels everything you do, and everyone has one.
I agree.
It doesn't matter what your age.
Yeah, I agree. Well, and one of the things that I wrote about in the book, The Breakthrough Code, is when you attach what you want. I don't call them goals because people tend to, I've got a goal and then they didn't achieve it. I call them results, like different language for the mind. But when you attach it to your purpose, and someone taught me a while ago that your purpose is not what you do. You're not like, I'm a dad, you're a mom, you're a talk show host, right? That's not your purpose. Your purpose is what happens in other people when you do what you do. And that really is your purpose. But when you attach what you want to purpose, because we came into this existence with a purpose. And when we can attach something that we want and connect it to purpose, it has this unbelievable life force rushing forward. But how do you help people? Because I know, like, when someone encouraged me to speak about my dad, and because he was a hero, he died protecting others, but it was really painful for so many years for me.
Of course.
To think about it, where, I would kind of tear up and then feel embarrassed. And someone said, I was doing a speech and I was just practicing with them years ago. I was probably, in my 20s, I think. And I said, I don't know if I should tell this story because I think I might get too emotional. And they go, well, you got to tell it. And it took a lot of courage to do it and being very vulnerable. But if that person would have encouraged me, I don't know if I would have. Now it's very easy, right? It's very empowering for me. What do you tell people that are like, well, no, it's too sensitive, or it's too close to my heart? What do you tell them? And you said some great things like it's healing, but how do you coach them through telling their story?
I say you dive into the pearls of wisdom. So there's this meditation that I do, and actually, to me in my book Interactive, I made QR codes. You can scan your phone and it takes you into this visualization.
The book is Becoming Aware. Yeah. When you also have the Aware Show.
Yes.
So everyone check out the book Becoming Aware by Lisa.
It's an interactive. So you go and you can scan your phone and you can go into a visualization that takes you back into your timeline of the events that have happened. And I break it down into quadrants of your life and look at the first 20 years and pull from 30,000 foot view, look down and pull out the seeds of the wisdom that you got from that first quadrant. And then you go into the 20 to 40. And that's when you're in that phase of identifying, who am I? How am I different from this world? And where do I fit in? And where do I end? And it begins. And you go through all that. You pull out those pearls. And then you come into now at this moment. And then you take those seeds, like those beautiful seeds of wisdom, and you sprinkle them into your timeline, into the future. Mm-hmm. And you impact thousands and thousands of lives you may never even know, and it doesn't matter. But you're impacting generations to come with your wisdom. That is an incredibly healing process when you do that. And you can even, my father, by the way, was also in Vietnam, and he recently passed. And my mother went through this purposelessness after his passing, because keeping him alive was
her purpose,
right?
Yeah.
Leukemia, Agent Orange, the whole thing.
Yeah.
And so I'm watching her now in her 80s try to find her purpose.
Yeah.
And she thinks it's over and there's nothing else left to live for.
Because your dad's not here.
Right.
But her purpose isn't over.
And my mom's been an incredible businesswoman her whole life. And she's been, all the women in my life have been amazing businesswomen. So it was kind of like, how do I don't have a purpose anymore. And we're starting with just one tiny small thing. One small thing. She's just organizing her closet. And from that, she found someone to help organize the closet. And from that person happened to have been someone that dealt with pets. And that person is someone that's leading her into purpose around that. Oh, cool. That all came from the first stupid step of getting the clothes off the closet. Yeah. And so she has found purpose weaving through that experience at 82. And it's
82, finding purpose. That's amazing.
Yes. And we went, we were looking at places to live, and it's like, there's no purpose in the places. You got to find purpose from here, no matter where you are in life. So what was your question? I went on a tangent about the timeline.
It was
how do you hold
it cool.
Yes.
And I'm actually glad you talked about that, because one thing that happened with my mom, when my dad passed away, she had a 3-year-old, she had a 2-year-old, she had a 6-month-old.
Oh my God.
Her purpose really became, she never remarried. She sacrificed so much for her boys. And then, unfortunately, similar situation, but at a much younger age, after we were out of college and school and everything, and she went back to work as a nurse, but her purpose was us. Like, she thought that was a role she had. That was not her purpose.
Right.
And then she worked as a nurse, which she had been a nurse before we were born, but then she died way too young. And she got, right after she retired from nursing, she got a form of leukemia that you're not supposed to pass. It was like a mild form, but she passed away within about 2 years. And I know a lot of it was, if you don't have a purpose, you cannot fight, the things, you can't, the things that might be attacking your immune system. Your immune system doesn't have a purpose anymore.
Right.
And so it's so critical to have purpose. The question I asked you, though, was, how do you help people who might be a little bit afraid to tell their story? And one other thing you just made me think of, it's healing not only for that person, but it's also healing for other people, but it's especially healing for your children. You start to clear things from them by having the courage to share the story of trauma that maybe they went through or they know you went through. But how do you help people find that courage? You have so much courage. I mean,
well, it takes a long time, and the people that I work with are that way. That some of them have had incredibly horrific experiences happen to them, and they can't talk about it because they're in danger. If they talk about a perpetrator, if they talk about an abuser, they can't tell their story.
Yeah.
So there's 2 ways that I always tell coach people to tell their story. Is it has to come from the healed place, the healed version of your story. You cannot go back into the trauma because you've elicit trauma in those that you talk about.
Oh, very important.
So you come from that healed space of the forgiveness aspect of it, and that, what places you could take responsibility, not for the action of others, but for yourself moving forward. How do you take that responsibility? And that always helps when you tell it from the healed version of yourself.
I love that.
And the responsibility piece is also, my opinion of this situation is, you take it from a first person perspective and say, I had this experience, my opinion was, no one can ever take your opinion from you.
Right.
But my opinion was this, my mother was an abuser, or my opinion was this, this man was an abuser. I mean, so you're safe in telling your story always, so that you're protected and going forward telling your story. It is something that I hear a lot, and I never want to put people in jeopardy by telling their story. And then the other thing is, how many avenues do we have now to tell our stories? Right. You can get on your phone and you could just start speaking. You could send it to a transcriber for $5 and you can create a blog. You can now do ChatGPT and they can create it for you.
I like your story.
No.
Yeah.
But
make up a story for me.
Yeah. And you can also do you can podcast it. You can put it up these podcast platforms. Yeah. You put it on one platform and it broadcasts to all the other podcasts. You can have your voice. And that is one thing that I didn't have after my accident, is I didn't have my voice. Yeah. And I had to work to get my voice back intentionally. Now I use my voice for change. I knew what it was like not to have one, physically not to have a voice. And when I got my voice back, memory not so much, but when I got my voice back, I now intentionally use my voice for change, and I am so blessed to be able to do that every day. Now, that was 20 years ago, all there was live radio. There wasn't podcasts, and there wasn't all these great things that now we're on. But I just think all the streaming networks out there, all of the opportunities that you have to be able to broadcast your voice these days, do it.
Yeah.
Write it.
Yeah.
Get it out there. Start a support group.
Yeah.
Do it. It's so healing for you and the people around you.
I love when you talk about your voice too, because having lost it, now having to earn it back, you appreciate it so much.
So much.
I had a ride in an Uber here, and the person driving me was an immigrant, and worked a full-time job for an insurance company, and then drives Uber on the weekends, and had a day off today, so drove me. And I think about how when we take things for granted, we just don't appreciate them. And here's this person coming over here to go to school, but then stays here and is working so hard to bring value to people and create an amazing life. And, when we go through these adversities, when we kind of get knocked back and we have to earn it, it really does create an appreciation, right? It's just so much more fulfilling.
Oh my goodness. I love the stories of Uber drivers. I always ask their story. I love their story. Oh my gosh, I love the journey they've been through and how much they've had to sacrifice, many of them, to get to this country, and then how they're capitalizing on the economy of the country. Right. Uber, great way to do that and make money and not have to have a lot of trade qualifications. And you can do that in this country. And they
don't look down on it. They're like, hey, I'm going to go work. Like, other people, we're an Uber driver, right?
Yeah. And I love that. So please, if you're ever in an Uber, please ask the story of your driver.
Oh, you get the greatest conversations.
I do.
The same too. Yeah,
I do.
I love it. Yeah.
I love it. Yeah.
And I love hearing people's stories. So I'm so happy that you're coaching people on telling your story. And so many people want life to be, you do one thing and then bam, everything else is gravy. Like, you have one story of being in an accident and then, things creating a new trajectory, but right. I'm sure you have plenty of stories.
Oh my goodness.
It's just like I just want everyone to know it's not like all of a sudden, bam, or nothing goes wrong ever in your life. Because my book is about living a life without limits, but it doesn't mean everything's perfect. It means where you notice a limit, right?
Yeah.
You'll start
telling
yourself. Yeah.
We, as humanity, experienced a massive story during COVID.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't even think we've even unpacked that story yet. We experienced a global shutdown that has never happened before. But do you remember it was 2020, it was March, it was Easter, and there was this YouTube airing of Andrea Bocelli singing on the steps of the El Duomo.
Oh.
And somebody captured the live cams in the most populated places around the world. You can still see this on YouTube, of Milan and the Champs-Élysées and the busiest beaches in the world. And each one of them had this incredible stillness. It was beautiful, with him singing Amazing Grace. I mean, you have to watch this on YouTube.
I'm going to watch it. I've not seen it. Thank you for
telling me. But it was a global, Tom, have we ever had a global pause?
No.
You know what I saw in that moment? In that peaceful moment, amidst the chaos, with the deaths and the ticker count on CNN with the deaths and the death and this birth that was happening at the same time, and this stillness. On the beaches, you had turtles that were laying eggs that would last another 100 years.
What was the movie? What was the movie a documentary that talked about that? Do you remember that one?
I don't remember.
About how the pause and then nature reawoken?
Yeah. Is there one?
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
And the skies for pollution.
Yes. Yeah. We witnessed our Mother Earth with 5 seconds to recover from global warming and global crisis.
Yeah.
And it recovered in that year, that we had of not bludgeoning the earth. It recovered in 6 months.
Yeah.
What could happen but there was, that took a global pause to do that. But that, I believe, was a hard reset for humanity.
I agree.
It was a hard reset. It was pull out the hard drive, hard reset.
Yeah.
And if we look in that moment and dive into that moment and really open it up, look at what's changed in your life since then. I fully invite you to do that, please, because businesses were lost, loved ones were lost, but what was gained? What was learned? What was birthed?
Yeah.
What was birthed was a humanity that has come together to solve this global pandemic. However you view it, doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. But what has come together is we never want that to happen again. Yeah. How do we not lose our businesses and our loved ones again?
Right.
That's come together. We had every country around the world trying to solve a problem. Now, if we had put that energy towards the earth, what would we have? Yeah. We would have so many solutions. I think technology is going to be a huge solution to all of this in the future. It's not a bad thing. There are parts of it that are scary, but there are also parts of it that advance humanity.
Yeah.
And we're in that revolution now. So that's the story. That's the global story. That's the story of humanity. We're in the middle of it right now. And as has been prophesized, we're just launching into where the prophecies are all about what's coming in the future, where there is hope.
Right.
And it's the darkest before the dawn.
Yeah.
So
We talked about that a little bit at the meeting.
Flynn Twist, yes. I love that.
But I love also how you're bringing up that time, because actually it wasn't that long ago, but to me it seems like so long ago. And because you and I are, more accustomed to probably taking so-called negative things and turning them into, okay, what can happen from this? We probably didn't feel as much trauma as most people did, but some people are still traumatized by that.
Yes.
And it's a wonderful opportunity for them to choose how they want to think about it moving forward. What is this story going to be? Like, you could have been, traumatized to this day by that bike accident and still felt like, I wish that never would have happened. But you have a different way of looking at it. You're like, that made you who you are. That opened a whole new way of looking at life.
Yes. It's been, every single business industry has changed and pivoted since COVID.
Yeah.
It all looks different now.
My businesses did, for sure.
Completely.
But we had a record year last year. Even though we couldn't do any events live, we did all virtual. But we were fortunate. And again, as we grow through time, our emotional intelligence goes up because we face adversities. And I happen to be an old guy, right? So it wasn't as traumatizing. Maybe if I would have experienced it in my 20s or 30s, I'm sure it would have been incredibly traumatic, but it doesn't have to be if you're in your 20s and 30s. It's all the way you look at it. You had an event happen in your 20s that now affects you.
But look at COVID. I had a audience business.
Oh, yeah.
There were no gatherings anywhere.
Right.
And I was looking for them. Nope. Everything went virtual. And then when you realize the connection that virtual actually allows the global community to come together rather than the local community of who you're speaking in front of or grabbing, yes, there's much bigger audiences. So now we have this hybrid experience of virtual and in person. Broadcast is starting to catch up to that a little bit. The speaking industry has absolutely caught up to that.
Yeah.
And so it's changed and pivoted. The thing is that you can't look at it. I did for a minute. I looked at this as that company's gone. 30 years of my life just went away overnight. I remember that day. All of my clients canceled. Every broadcast, every network, cancel, all the shows.
Yeah.
It was a Friday the 13th. It was March. I remember that day.
Friday
And
the 13th.
It was, yeah. And I just sat on the couch thinking, it's going to be fine in 3 months. It'll bounce back. The entertainment industry is going to bounce back. It's so resilient. 6 months go by. This is it. Then there goes the identity. Who am I now? I'm not a businesswoman anymore. Who am I now? What did happen to my identity as an income earner? And what am I doing? And a lot of people have experienced this. And I had to look deep inside and find out what parts of my identity do I need to let go of? And what parts do I want to make more of? And then what direction, unknowingly, will that take me? And it's been a journey since then.
Yeah, but here you are. You still have that business, and
we're always learning.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, it's that's the beauty of life. Like we think we want it to be very predictable, but that would be so boring.
Oh,
we need this.
I don't know. I'm kind of looking for a little predictability these days.
I used to think that too. But I remember one time I was playing chess, online chess on an airplane, and I put it at I guess it was wasn't totally beginner level, but it was a little bit above that. I was winning every game. It stunk, and it was so boring. We do need, and I'm not talking about we need always the tough things, but we just need we need challenges. We need excitement. We need these experiences. I think that's why we come here. Look, we're as you experience, we're spiritual beings where everything is perfect and we're all connected. We come into this physical body, right, to maybe not have as much as as much of that, but I think the key is 1 foot in the physical world, 1 foot in that world that you were in when you went through that accident. When you keep reminding yourself, hey, this is all a little bit of a game. It's an illusion. Remember, you're a creator, but at the same time, enjoy the physical part.
These colloquialisms of contrast creates clarity, or one door opens, another closes, another opens. These are actually true. When you get to that place of such adversity where you have to, a part peels off, I see that as a chunking up. You're raising your level of happiness or vibration or frequency so much that some of the things that can't hang on any longer, fall off. It can be painful.
Yeah.
That could be a relationship. That could be an income. That could be a house. That could be something that doesn't, it could be, your health. When you raise your level of happiness and frequency up here, remember to keep the other things up with it so that you can pull those things into that frequency or attract new things into that frequency. Because if you're not growing, you're dying. Bruce Lipton says it. If you're not growing, you're dying. And the cell does it. If it's not growing, it's imploding. Then it's dying and it's creating another one. And that's who we are. We're mimicking that all of our existence, no matter what background, no matter what whatever race you are, whatever economic background you come from, whatever story you come from, if you are not growing, you are dying.
Yeah. And Bruce also said we're either in a protective state or a growth state.
Right.
And so many people are in a protective state. What do you tell people that are in fear, that really are, because the recession's coming,
Right.
war over in the Ukraine, it's more, the world is dangerous.
Yes. And it is.
But they can't create from that state of being.
The other part that he says, you can either be in a protective state or a
Growth state.
Growth state,
Yeah.
but you can't be in both at the same time.
Yeah.
And so when you are either in this growth state or you are in the protective state, but they two do not exist.
Like how you have the protective state down here.
I know, right? But they don't exist at the same time. So if you choose the conversation around what's possible, what's next, and I always suggest starting with the simplest thing, the thing that's right in front of you, the thing that you don't think is going to help you, the thing that doesn't have that big lofty idea, that one simple thing, like I told my mom, start with the closet. And that led into the next and the next and the next, because that one thing is the tiniest step towards possibility. If you're going to cycle and recycle the same conversation, you're going around in circles. If you go one tiny little step, that one phone call, that one job interview, that one thing, it will lead you in a different direction. Yeah. You got to do something different, of course, to create a different result. So that's, even if you're in that moment of total perturbation where you're going through that adversity and it sucks, still you've got to find that one little thread that you can look at that's going to pull you through, because you pull on it, it's going to be a bigger piece of twine.
Even if it's just a new thought. Yeah. So how do people see your show? Tell us how, because you've helped so many people, you interview so many amazing people. You are such a shining light. You've helped millions of people. So everyone probably already knows about it, but if they don't know about it, first of all, the book, you can get that on Amazon.
Yes, you can get the book on Amazon. We have a podcast, The Aware Show. It's all under the Aware Show brand. It's theawareshow.com. The book is Becoming Aware, and the story coaching is all there on theawareshow.com as well.
Beautiful. I love it. What if you had to encapsulate your message of what your best hopes are for everybody listening moving forward, what would be your best advice for them or best thing that you can share with them right now?
There's so many.
I would only get one.
Okay. I would say no matter where you are, start there and do the first most obvious thing, the first most obvious step that's going to move you in the forward pacing direction. Stop recycling the same old conversations and do something different, no matter what it is. And that thought will lead to the next and the next and the next, and you'll find yourself in a different place. And you can also, in the meantime, set the intention around that, set the goal around that, intentionally move towards that next forward movement in your life. I think that's, if I were to choose one, that's the one thing I would say.
Yeah. Lisa, you are a beautiful soul. Thank you so much for being with us. And everybody, thank you for joining us.